speaking of which, Susan, you understand business. You were president of the chamber for a number of years. You're on the executive board of the Austin Area Research Organization. You were deemed an Austin Profile and Power Profile Leader and an Austin Under 40 Austinite of the Year. We won't say whether that was yesterday or several years ago. You understand business. You were a UT Macomb School Trailblazer Award winner. Talk to us a little bit more about the connection. You know, housing, healthcare, education, how are they all connected, and what's the impact to our region if we remain at status quo and don't address these issues?
Well, as you've heard already, I think the primary thing that we have to look at, again, as our communities, as our congregations, is that you can't look, there's no silver bullet. There's not just one thing that you can attack and hope that all magically things change, because they are so interconnected. If you don't have a place to live, it's very difficult to do homework at night, to show up at school. Your health issues dramatically increase. All of these things are very interconnected, and what happens is that you and I, unfortunately, and David Balch, who is formerly the CEO of United Way, used to say this all the time, there are a lot of communities in the country where those problems immediately come home to you, where everywhere you look, you see and you understand that people are uninsured next door to you, where there's crime rates. In Austin, it's almost a hidden problem, because our communities in Austin are very bifurcated. Most of us, when we go home, and the routes that we travel and the places that we go, we don't necessarily encounter this, so we don't necessarily see the impact that it has on those other people. And the impacts on us tend to be more hidden, but the impacts are there. The impacts are in the tax rates we pay. The impacts are in paying the hospital bills of those who go to the emergency room because they don't have primary care. The impacts are in when we show up for the emergency room and it's busy and we can't get in because it's being used as a primary care provider. So all of those hidden economic impacts are what come back to every single one of us, because we don't necessarily encounter the problems every day, and we have such a bifurcated community here in the Central Texas region. Just one thing that I wanted to make sure that you understood, another statistic is that we talked about the mobility issues of those who aren't necessarily homeless but may move from place to place, 1 month free rent apartments or whatever. There are 5 middle schools in AISD, in Austin Independent School District. There are 5 middle schools where more than 30% of the kids have moved at least once during the school year. So think about that, is that during the school year they've switched schools, they've lost their teachers, they've lost their friends, they aren't necessarily showing up with the same curriculum being taught, and immediately they lose ground. That's 30% of kids in 5 of our schools. So again, you can see the interconnectedness of all of this.
And in case you missed it, part of the reason they're moving, their parents are chasing cheaper rent. You know, so they drive around, or they see that another apartment complex gives you 30 days free rent or a month free rent, so they move.
Or there's multiple families in the same living place and they don't have room.
So they move. Absolutely.
But recognizing that, because for the last couple of years, HousingWorks has actually done its summit with AISD, and in talks with Alan Weeks and the work you all have been doing in St. John's, we actually worked with the city to initiate a program to pair rental assistance with counseling, so that if a family was at risk of having to move, and I'm not sure how this is all playing out, whether it's being experimented with in a couple schools, that they would have somebody doing much as what Alan and the folks in St. John's have organized, and this would be something that the churches could do, is help people find a place that they could afford that isn't outside that school, so that if they have to move, and then the rental voucher can help pay the difference. So if I can afford $400 or $500, but the rent's going to be $700, the voucher can cover the $200, and I can keep my kid in the same school. So maybe I had to move, or so that's an example of how sometimes it's some of the public dollars and then some volunteer effort combines to create a solution so that a kid doesn't have to get moved.
And it is starting to work. And a great example is around Webb Middle School, where there's been a really holistic push by the community to be able to address those needs. And what we've seen in just the last couple of years is that the mobility rate at Webb has gone down from 35% to 29%, which is still far too high, but that's a very significant decrease in a very short time.
Another way we could all work together, again, to combine sort of the caring hearts and hands is a lot of affordable rental housing may house families who are working families, but maybe mom doesn't have a high school degree. Maybe mom is staying at home because the most economically productive thing she can do is stay home with the kids so that the kids don't have to go to childcare. So that saves, you know, a ton of money every month. That's very valuable economically. But if she doesn't know how to get the kid ready for school, so there's programs like Hippie and Avance that actually can work where one counselor can coach 120 families on how to be sure to have their kids ready for school. That's incredibly efficient. And if we could figure out a way that people, you know, the education community, the housing community, and the faith community could pair up, we could probably be, it doesn't take more facilities, it doesn't take trained teachers. We could be helping people understand at the very beginning that their kid could be ready for school. And of course, being ready for school doesn't take, you know, it's not an 8-hour-a-day job to you know, teach ABC 1, 2, 3, red, green, and blue. We could get over this hurdle and have our kids all coming into school ready, and at the same time having the parents understanding that if their kid, the stuff that Susan said. So pairing public dollars with efforts and people could really make a difference on some of these.
I want to give another example too about a collaboration between housing and health. So we have a group of women that basically had to have daily, when they're diagnosed with cancer, have to make the tough decision of whether they do chemotherapy, which means that they will lose their job or keep their job and forego chemotherapy. And what we did is we paired up with Coleman and with a housing project, and we actually have housing for these women. So now they don't have to worry about, as they lose their job, lose their housing or their shelter. They can get their chemo, and at that same time in the housing effort, we're bringing jobs training, and we're allowing them to learn other ways so that when they finish with the chemotherapy, they can be marketable in perhaps another industry and be able to regain their employment.
Thank you.